wish I was preaching in here. You got to understand that Jesus is the one who can pull you back into water, sit down inside of you, and start speaking from you. Somebody in the room, you owe God a praise, because some people told you you'd be dead by now, but here you are on a Sunday morning looking good, smelling good, got a testimony in your mouth. Tell your neighbor, you don't know like I know what the Lord has done for me. I don't know how y'all feel about it, but I'm so glad that God knows how to look past my faults and meet me right where I need him. Because the truth of the matter is, when God looks at you, he does not see your past. What he sees is your potential. When people judge you because of where you came from, you can give them the hand and say, I don't care where I came from. I'm only thinking about where I'm going. I wish I had some preaching power in here. Pull on your neighbor and tell your neighbor, I got potential. I don't care what I look like. I got potential. I don't care what my history says. I got potential. Is there anybody in the room who knows that you still have potential in your life? Because the truth of the matter is, if you are still living after all of the hell you've been through, that means God still got something for you to do. Let me see if I can make this live for you. Let me see if I can make this. Y'all sit down. Y'all making me nervous. One of the things that I love about living in the culture that we live in now is a dishwasher. I love the dishwasher. But I remember a time before we had the dishwasher, when we had to wash the dishes in the sink. Y'all remember? We would fill up the sink with hot water, put the detergent in the water, wash this, and scrub the dishes. Some dishes did not require as much attention as others, because some required little scrub, but some required a whole lot of scrub. But when you washed your dishes and put the dishes in the dish rack, God help me, they didn't look like what they looked like when you got them out the sink, because you had washed them. And y'all, it hit me that God does us the same way, that God does not treat us like throwaway tables and throwaway cups and throwaway paper plates, but God treats us like reusable plates and reusable cups. Look at your neighbor and tell your neighbor, I've been through something, but God can still use me, because I got potential. Let the church shout potential. We understand that some things God will set us up because he wants to pull the potential out of us. And so what he has to do is do what he wants to do, not what he needs to do. And so not only does he show us that he sees our potential, but the text also teaches us that Jesus makes the difference. After Jesus preaches to the people, he tells Peter to take the boat out into deep water. Let the church shout deep water. He says, take it out into deep water and let the nets down. Peter looks at Jesus and says to Jesus, we just came from out there. We have been out there all night long. We have worked hard and didn't catch anything. We have already washed our nets. We had already put the boat to the shore. He said, it might sound crazy, but I'm going to do it because you told me to do it. Look at your neighbor and tell your neighbor, do what he told you to do. Wrong neighbor, look at somebody else and tell him, do what God told you to do. He understands. He said, it is now morning. They had fished all night in the dark and did not catch a thing. And now Jesus says, go right back out there and do it all over again. I'm dealing with somebody in the room, because, watch this, Peter is still the same Peter. The sea is still the same sea. The boat is still the same boat. The only difference is now Jesus is in the boat. I want somebody to understand that Jesus makes the difference. That's why Jesus is telling somebody in the room to do it again. Because the first time you tried, you didn't try it with a relationship with Jesus Christ. So he said, do it again. God says, go back and try it over. Because the first time you went out there, you didn't take me with you. But Jesus says, now that I'm in the boat with you, I can make all the difference in your life. Somebody ought to give God the glory because you know he made the difference in your life. Somebody in here owes God a praise because he was the difference between you losing your mind and you keeping your mind. He was the difference between you living broke, busted, and disgusted to still having everything you need. He was the difference from you slapping your supervisor and getting fired off the job to you going back to your cubicle and shutting your mouth. Tell your neighbor, he made the difference. See, I understand. See, some of y'all can't shout on this because some of y'all ain't never experienced the darkness of life. But I'm talking about 400 of y'all in the room that have had some dark days. I'm talking to somebody in the room who had to cry sometime. I'm talking to somebody in the room. You wouldn't even answer your cell phone. Just sit there and look at it ringing. But now you got to give God the praise. Because he made the difference in your life. Shake your neighbor's hand and tell your neighbor, he made the difference. That's the reason why I can shout, because he made the difference. That's the reason why I didn't lose my joy, because he made the difference. That's the reason why I don't look like people I went to high school with, because he made the difference. Tell your neighbor, I'm so glad he made the difference in my life. Give your neighbor a high five and tell him it's a setup. Yeah, it teaches us, watch this, that he sees our potential. It teaches us that he makes the difference. But it also teaches us that if you obey him, it pays to obey him. Watch this, the text says that Jesus looks at Peter and says to Peter, let's go back out there. Peter says, nevertheless, at your will, we will let down the nets. Now, here's the depth in the text. Jesus is not a fisherman. Jesus is a carpenter. Peter, watch this, is not a man who likes to fish. He is a fisherman, which means he does this for a living. He gets paid to do. He knows what time of day to go fishing, but Jesus says, go anyway. Look at your neighbor and tell your neighbor, go anyway. Watch this, when they get out there, the Bible says that when they let the net down, that they caught so much fish that the fish began to break the net, that the net could not hold everything God had intended for Peter. And the net began to just break apart and just pull apart. So watch this, they put the net in the boat, and the boat started sinking because of so much fish. I hear God saying to somebody, overflow. I wish you would just shout overflow. That God is saying, if you do what I tell you to do, you will have more than enough. I'm talking to somebody in the room. God help me, you used to live in broke, but God say, if you do what I tell you to do, I'll make sure you have all the money that you need. Somebody shout overflow. You got to understand that your watches, your blessing is connected to your obedience. That sometime God will set you up just to see if you will do what he said to do, because if you obey God, it means that you will trust in him and not yourself. Let me tell you something, don't ever trust what CNN says. Trust what the SON say. God help me, because if God told you to do it, he will do just what he said he'd do. But when God blesses you, don't be stingy and stuck up, but learn how to be a blessing to somebody else. Look at your neighbor and tell your neighbor, whatever God blessed you with, he blessed you to be a blessing to somebody else. Trust me, I'm still in the text. Watch this, because the Bible says that when Peter's boat started sinking, he called out to James and John, bring your boat over here. And when James and John brought their boat over there, their boat started sinking too. God said, if you do what I tell you to do, I will give you a blessing you can't handle. And I don't know how y'all feel about it, but I want to try one of those blessings. Look at your neighbor and tell your neighbor, I want to try that. I want God to bless me so good that I have to say, wait a minute, God, you blessing me too fast. I want God to bless me so good that I keep shouting on Monday because of what he did on Thursday. Look at your neighbor and tell your neighbor, when I think about the goodness of Jesus and all he's done for me, tell him my soul shouts hallelujah. God is saying to somebody, overflow. Shake 3 hands and just shout overflow. God say you used to not having enough, but God getting ready to flip the script in your life. God say I'm going to give you double for your trouble. God say if you keep following me, I'll give you what you need. Come on, we might as well have some church. Look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, I've done what God told me to do, and now I want what God wants me to have. Look at your neighbor, say, neighbor, I don't care how much I already got, but if God got something else for me, tell him I want that too, because I believe that God will dump a blessing and dump a blessing and dump a blessing and dump a blessing and dump a blessing. Look at your neighbor, say, neighbor, I want God to bless me so good that I have to say, Lord, I thank you for everything you do for me. Look at your neighbor, say, neighbor, it's a setup. Every time you cried, it was a setup. Every time they broke your heart, it was a setup. Every time you had a headache, it was a setup. Every time your heart ached, it was a setup. All the hell you've been through, it was a setup, because God getting ready to flip the script. Look at your neighbor and shout overflow.